Welcome back, nerds. Hope y'all have been enjoying yourselves. My name is Nikita. I'm your local comic authority, and this is
My name is Gino. I'm your locale weeb enthusiast. And today
gross,
we
but
are
that's okay.
joined by our new great friend.
Another local nerd. Well, not really local. He's actually in a big city, compared to me and Gino. But Dave, want to introduce
Hey,
yourself?
yeah, I'm Dave Baker. I don't know what authority I am. I guess Star Trek? I don't know.
Star Trek.
I like a lot of stuff, man.
Comic book writer authority, I
Yeah,
would say,
yeah,
an actual
yeah.
comic author. Among us right now, between me and Gino, we're actually interviewing Dave because he's releasing a new series with a few other writers called "Everyone is Tulip," and we actually got to read it ahead of time. And I just have to say, Dave, I actually really enjoyed the read. So did Gino. Gino's a big philosophy nerd, so I knew once I had finished reading it and I sent it to him, I was like, Gino, you are going to love this.
It was
But
wonderful. Like just to interject there, like I really did have a great time. Like I
I'm
say that
so
enough.
excited to shoot the shit about this. Let's do it.
yeah, well, let's start off, Dave. Kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into comic book writing first, if you don't mind us asking?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm originally from Arizona. I moved to LA some years ago. I kind of don't even remember at this point. Maybe 6, 8, 10, 50,000 years ago. Who knows? Pandemic has just screwed up everything. I think things that happened last year happened like literally 5 years ago. So I don't even know how long.
It feels like that. It feels
Yeah.
like that.
But yeah, I love comics. I've always loved comics. I grew up reading Tintin by Hergé, the bande dessinée, the French comics, Franco-Belgian comics. Not so much the racist early ones, the later ones were kind of, got his shit figured out.
Have to clarify, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's still weird racial caricatures in all of the work, kind of, because, he's a dude from the fucking 40s.
Yeah.
But I love Hergé, and I love his artwork, and the character of Tintin was a big inspiration for me as a kid. There's something about this idea that like a lot of these kind of boy adventurer, girl adventurer, like Nancy Drew, Boxcar Children, Trixie Belden characters, Hardy Boys, they're always kind of like the secret message of all those books is like the adults are lying to you, like you, the child, know the truth. And that's kind of represented with them like walking through dark hallways with flashlights and stuff, uncovering things. And I just really, I loved that as a young person. It really struck a chord with me. And as an adult, I really relate to it as well, because I still feel like adults are lying to me. So I've basically been making comics since I was a kid. I've made like, little fan comics where I would draw like, my first comic that I made was like an X-Men fan comic.
Whoa.
I was really into Nightcrawler, but I didn't like get the idea that he was like, I didn't understand the interesting irony of he looks like a demon, but he's nice and friendly and religious. Like that. As a kid, I was like, no, he should be a fucking badass and kill people.
Badass blood ninja dude.
Yeah, exactly. And so I made a comic where he takes over as the leader of the X-Men, and the X-Mansion gets attacked by a bunch of people, and he like starts teleporting off dudes' heads. I was just like really into that idea as like a fucking 10-year-old or whatever.
So Marvel, if you're listening, take notes.
Yeah. What's up? What's up? Hire me to work on a new X-Men thing.
Book. Yeah. Because that's blowing up right now. I mean,
I recently watched the Nightcrawler movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, and I really was concerned that you were talking about that in some reference, and I was like, oh, you really were ahead of your time there, right?
Oh yeah, very, very different movie.
Very.
But I kind of love the idea. I wish someone would just rotoscope blue CGI makeup over him, so it's Jake Gyllenhaal's psychotic character filming dead people in Nightcrawler makeup. I love that idea. I would watch that so hard.
There we go. That's actually really cool, though. So wait, are you not to interrupt your story, but do you draw at all? Are you an artist?
Yeah. I'm a writer and an illustrator. I make a book called Action Hospital, which I co-drew. There's 3 volumes. I drew 2.5 of the volumes. It's kind of like a story about this hospital in the future that services people with extreme needs or otherworldly maladies. So and it's set up a little bit differently, and like all the books I make kind of have a formal comics language idea behind them. And that one specifically was that all of the characters, it's this big sprawling ensemble cast of nurses and doctors and patients in this hospital. And it's kind of big Silver Age kind of quirky ideas, and all of the characters in the hospital are paired with an individual artist. So whenever they show up, they're always drawn by the same person. So sometimes there's like 10 people all drawn on the same page.
Wow.
And almost really out of pragmatism more than anything else, I drew the main character. She wasn't intended to be the main character initially, but people come over to my house and they draw 5 pages and then they leave, and I'm like, well, fuck, where do I take that story from here? I guess I'll just use my character and go over this direction. But yeah, that's how I met Nicole Goux, the illustrator of Everyone is Tulip. I would, like I kind of said, I would have parties at my house where I would just kind of invite a bunch of artists over and we would all draw comics together. And it was a lot of fun. And Nicole and I hit it off, and she started making comics with me. And we've kind of, built a little company together where we just tour the country, going to conventions and selling comics. And we've published like 10 graphic novels. And, Nicole and I put out a book together through Silver Sprocket called Fuck Off Squad, which is a coming of age like romance comic. And then she got hired to do Shadow of the Batgirl by DC, and then that kind of got us the situation with Dark Horse, where now we're putting out Everyone is Tulip.
I read this earlier in your afterword about you and Nicole meeting, that you guys met over playing a game, like a drawing game on a cocktail.
On a napkin. Do
you mind going into that story?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I met Nicole at a gallery opening here in Los Angeles, and she had come, ironically, like a bunch of my friends in the LA area I had met through making Action Hospital stuff, or just kind of like posting on forums or going on Craigslist and be like, anybody want to make comics? And so I had met
Sorry, that's so cool. Like I just
and so I met a couple people, and I met this guy Clay Merle, who was really nice, and we made some comics together. And he was friends with Nicole. They had gone to college together, and they went to a Clay, me, and a couple other people were all at this gallery show, and Nicole knew various friends in the group. So we all went out to, I think it was like a barbecue karaoke place afterwards. And we all were hanging out, and as artists do, somebody started drawing on napkins, and we were drawing like almost kind of like an exquisite corpse drawing. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like a game from like the 1800s where you draw something and then pass it to the next person and they draw something. Okay. And I had drawn like a guy like flexing like this, and I handed the napkin to Nicole, and she drew a shake weight in the guy's like fist. And I was like, oh, this bitch is hilarious. I love this. This is great. Yeah, so we became friends just right off of that. Basically, I owe an entire comics career to a shake weight is basically what I'm saying.
Oh my gosh. That's so cool. And how have you guys like working with Dark Horse now that you guys are with them? Has it been like a crazy like dream come true kind of experience for you guys? Or
yeah, it's been really positive. Our editor Connor Knudsen found Fuck Off Squad at a comic book store in Portland, because that's where Dark Horse is. Portland, Oregon, not Portland, Maine. And he just got to make the distinction, baby. You gotta keep it clear, be specific. And so, he came to our table at a show. I forget if it was C2E2 or Emerald City, but he came to our table at a convention and was just kind of like, hey, I really liked this book you guys made. Nicole, I hear you're going to be doing this thing for DC. You're taking over this Batgirl graphic novel. Would you ever be interested in working with Dark Horse and potentially putting out something through us? I'm an editor there. And we were both like, yes.
You didn't have to think about it.
Yeah. We were both like, that would be good.
I hate to make like an Office reference, but I'm trying to remember is when Michael and the gang who left, when they were getting back together, and they're like, yeah, let's go and do negotiations, and they go into the conference room, close the blinds, and you just hear the woo, and it's like, I can imagine a very similar.
Yeah, it was similar to that. It was very, very, very positive. And I've very much enjoyed working with Dark Horse. It's been a fun time. Connor's been a great editor, and they've literally just let us do whatever we want. Like we had started the book prior to signing with Dark Horse, because it was just something that Nicole and I wanted to make. We kind of got obsessed with the world that the book takes place in, so we went to them basically with a book that was in production. It was kind of like hey, here's 80 to 100 pages of a book. Like, is this something that you think is cool? And they were like, yes, this is cool. And we were like, sick. See you in 6 months when it's finished.
There we go. Wow. That's so crazy, because I like, having talked to a few other comic book writers, like they talk about there being a lot of oversight when it comes to writing their comics and editors and stuff like that. So you guys didn't have that with Everyone is Tulip for the most part?
No, I mean, I've definitely had stuff like that, and that's fine. You know, like when you're like for Star Trek, there was an approvals process and a editorial involvement, and CBS weighed in and they had notes because I wrote a Voyager miniseries that IDW published, drawn by Angel
Seven's
Hernandez.
Reckoning, right?
Yeah, Seven's Reckoning. Yeah. Like that's a perfect example. Like that's not the name that I pitched. I pitched a completely different name, and the theme of the book fit into that theme.
Yeah.
And then they like 11th hour, they were like, look, bro, if the name Seven is in the title, it's going to sell a lot more. So we're changing the title to Seven's Reckoning. What do you think? And I was like, fuck yeah, let's do it. Like, sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my title was Star Trek Liberation, because the last line of the book is somebody saying the word liberation.
Yeah.
But it's fine. I don't care. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. It was a positive experience. I liked working with IDW, and their notes were pretty minimal. Like, I've heard some people on Star Trek having to recontextualize their stories significantly based on editorial remits, but that wasn't really the case with that one. But yeah, Everyone is Tulip is basically, you know, Connor was supportive and he helped us problem solve some stuff at a couple junctures, but it was mostly just Nicole and I making a book, you know.
Awesome.
That's a real, like, I think, I don't know if lucky is the right word. That's a beautiful thing to have, where it's like
I completely agree.
Kind of adding support at that point, and there's not really like huge changes you have to
make. Yeah, I completely agree, especially because the book itself is a little bit more of an abstract concept. Like, it's not about punching, it's not about people wearing spandex, it's not a genre hook, it's not a horror thing, you know. It's basically, the high concept of the book is that it's about this actor who moves from Arizona to Los Angeles to try and kind of make it in Hollywood, and gets haphazardly sucked up into the world of YouTube performance art and becomes this overnight viral sensation, where she kind of takes on this persona of a character named Tulip, and that character becomes very, very popular online, and it kind of warps her world in all of these weird and unexpected ways. And, you know, this happens to people, and then it also specifically happens to people that are in that internet performance art circle a lot. And it's a very interesting and weird and murky deep end of the internet that I don't think a lot of people talk about. And specifically, like, you know, we were interested in exploring themes of kind of artistic compromise and, you know, almost kind of, you know, like the medium is the message, right? You know, like how has that idea evolved since it was first introduced by Marshall McLuhan fucking 40, 50 years ago, whenever he wrote media on the media. You know, the book itself is this interrogation of these ideas through the lens of 4 or 5 people that are going through this industry. Becca Harper, the main character, is the primary kind of driving force of those narratives. But, you know, we also follow her producer director character, who kind of is the one that's coming up with these video ideas, a costume designer, and then Becca's roommate, who's another fellow actor who's kind of a struggling rich kid in Los Angeles. And so the book, it's not something that like fits easily into a pocket. It's not like there's like, oh yeah, it's like Hellboy, but slightly different. Like, it's not that, you know. So it could have been very easy for an editor or somebody who maybe wouldn't have had as broad of a vision to be like, I don't know, should we make this closer to something else? But thankfully, Dark Horse has not done that. They've been very supportive of our vision. They've been really like, you know, we want you guys to make the book that you guys want to make, and hopefully people like it. I don't know.
There,
Well,
I was
I think
interested. Oh, go for it, Nikita. Go for it.
Well, what are you gonna say? I was gonna segue into the book talk now because I mean,
yeah, I was gonna bring up. You kind of mentioned that there's not an easy way to like pin down this book, and I think that was one of the things that I was most fascinated by with it. When I was looking online for like just pre-looking into this book, looking at like art online and stuff like that, I noticed a lot that people were putting it under the genre of like psychological horror. Which I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I hadn't seen that. That's interesting. I guess maybe.
yeah, right.
I didn't fully agree with that. I think the way that I ended up coming to view it was like there was this cool concept that this felt almost like real to an instance. Like I can imagine this kind of like happening to someone as we have seen with like performance artists in the past. And so if you wanted to put it under like psychological horror, I think like where I found the horror from it was like this felt real.
Yeah.
I could easily step into this world that you and Nicole have crafted, and it was excellent in that.
Thank you.
Sign. But
Yeah, something I want to say, just following up on that real quick, is something I kind of noticed, and I don't know if this was intentional at all, but like Everyone is Tulip. I feel like the struggles that the main character Becca was going through and her playing Tulip, I feel like as a reader, there's always at least some point where you can relate to the character, and it really does make you think like, yeah, everyone is kind of Tulip in this kind of way. And I don't know if that was intentional by any means, but that's just how I felt reading the book, where I was like, wow, there's a lot of stuff that like I relate to, that I can already picture my friends and family relating to this character, and it was a really cool narrative to follow.
Yeah, without spoiling anything, there are multiple readings for the title Everyone is Tulip. I know that it's a weird title. I know it's not easy to remember. I know people sometimes say everything is Tulip, which is kind of funny to me. But the title Everyone is Tulip was chosen for a very specific reason, and it's not just because that's the catchphrase that Becca says in the videos when she's playing the character Tulip. It definitely, like I said, without spoiling anything, that title plays on like 4 or 5 different levels after you've finished the book and seen the ending and the choices that the characters have made, and how the readers also live in a world where phones are fucking everywhere.
Yeah. They're in regards to like the title and this idea of like abstract art and the phrase Everyone is Tulip, and like that's how it progresses throughout the story. I kept thinking of the video. There's this old horror video on YouTube with it's like a dressed up mannequin that sings like auto-tuned I Feel Fantastic like over and over again. And so like the idea of like that kind of different ways of either saying the phrase or like saying it over and over again where it gets ingrained in your mind, I thought it worked really well for the title. So I'm not sure who gave you that feedback, but I'm going to fight him for it. I thought it was pretty good, everything considered.
The story is obviously influenced by real world people, right? So there are a couple online influencers that if people are interested in this world, it's pretty apparent who the initial influences are, right? Like we're not hiding it. But I think that the book is much more than just a shitty unauthorized biography of one of these influencers. Like I think it has a much wider scope. I think it has quite frankly a darker inclination, and also, and I don't mean this to toot my own horn, I just mean it's kind of funny. Like the book itself is kind of funny. Like there's a very strange, dry sense of humor that the characters and the cruelty of the world has, which is something that probably doesn't communicate as we're like just talking about it. And especially if I'm over here being like, fucking Marshall McLuhan and fucking, fucking the medium is the message. Like, I don't know that you necessarily would be like, oh, this book is definitely a comedy. Like, to me, it's interesting to hear it described as a psychological horror movie, because I think that is a valid interpretation. I don't know that it's like my initial thought. Like my initial thought is it's like a black comedy. Like it's like a really grim, like, do you ever see that Robert Altman movie, The Player? Like that's kind of how I look. It's really great. The Player is basically about Tim Robbins plays a development executive in Hollywood who gets accosted by a screenwriter who is sending him letters threatening him and that he's going to kill him because the development executive said that he would make his movie, his screenplay, and then didn't. And the Tim Robbins development executive character has said that so many times to people, because in LA, people are kind of fake and you just say yes just to say yes so you can get them out the door, and then you're immediately like, yeah, fuck that, that's not happening. That he doesn't know how to solve this problem. So his life starts unraveling as he's attempting to figure out who the antagonist is that's coming for him, this unnamed specter of a screenwriter. And it's very like that high concept doesn't sound funny. The movie is very funny. The movie is very surreal and silly, and it's a movie about what it's like to live in Los Angeles, both literally and metatextually. And that's kind of what our book is about, where it is this probing, theoretically intellectual deep dive into what it takes to be a person on the internet in a serious way, TM. But it's also like making fun of people for like shopping at Lululemon and like eating $400 brunches and shit, you know?
Yeah. I like that a lot. Gino, do you have any other comments about the book before we start asking questions that you had?
I think the one that stood out in particular to me that I remember was that I thought your portrayal of the internet, I thought was spot on. I cannot tell you how many times I get pissed off either like watching a movie or like reading a book or something, and it'll be like some way. It happens a lot in anime where they go into like forums and they'll be like, these are how people communicate with each other online, and I'm like, that's bullshit. Like that's, or if it's not bullshit, it's old at this point that people don't communicate this way. And reading Everyone is Tulip, I was like, holy shit! I was like, you got this like spot on in the way that like people communicate and talk online. So even going to include like the way that articles are framed and formulated and advertised. So I think that's my last like serious comment, that I was blown away by that, and I was like yes, Dave. I was like, let's get it.
Thank you. I have to say a large amount of that credit goes to Nicole Goux, the illustrator of the book, because like I said previously, like most of my books have some sort of formal comics language, comics mechanics thing that I'm interested in interrogating. And sometimes it's this, it changes, like one, maybe there's like a caption mechanic thing, or one, it's this idea of like everybody's drawing on the same page, or the next one, maybe it's just like the whole book is drawn on a double page spread, and as you turn the page, it's the same image over and over again, and people just move around within the environment. That was a book, Suicide Forest, I did with Nicole. And this one, we were really interested in utilizing A, 9-panel grids, and B, cell phones inside of the 9-panel grids in order to rhythmically create compositions. Because there's something really interesting about comics that's unlike any other artistic medium, in that you're constantly having to think on 3 levels at once. You're thinking about a composition that's in a panel, then you're thinking about the composition of a page, and then you're thinking about the composition of a double page spread at once. And so when you have a 9-panel grid with cell phones are the same, shape roughly as a horizontal 9-panel grid panel, you can do narrative panel, cell phone panel, narrative panel, and you can alternate them. So you can make the cell phones into a cross shape. You can make them into a diamond shape. You can make rhythmic patterns with the way that those compositions kind of speak to each other visually, which was something that was very interesting to me in a book about compromise and about pushing yourself into an asymmetrical kind of emotional state. Could we reflect that visually, literally with a phone? And so it would be like across and then across with phones, but one of the phones where there should be a phone wasn't there, or some those kind of like small thematic visual elements. And that is all Nicole. Like, I came up with those ideas, but that doesn't mean anything. Writing comic scripts is just writing a blueprint. Drawing the comic is the real art form. And Nicole and our colorist, Ellie Hall, developed that, executed it, brought it to life, and made it the book what it is. I mean, they even came up with the idea that there is a color palette specifically for when the internet shows up. So when there's a piece of technology or a character that is interacting with the internet in some way, there's this light, ghosty blue color that shows up. And that thematically plays through the whole book itself, which is, I don't want to spoil how that factors in, but it's very like when you're reading it, you don't initially notice it. And then by the middle of the book, you're like, oh, this is what this means. And it's very, very compelling, and it couldn't have been done by an artist other than Nicole or Ellie. Like I genuinely believe they're the only people on planet Earth that could make this thing, which makes me very excited because I want to read authorial, weird stuff that feels like it was made by the only person that could make it. And the fact that I was a part of making one of those things is very, very exhilarating to me. And I mean that in complete, genuine, like not hype, like trying to sell a book. I mean, like for a long time, all I wanted to do was just be a part of the comics world in any way. And the fact that Nicole and Ellie and I have made this thing, I'm so incredibly proud and so incredibly honored to have been their creative compatriot in this process.
I also wanted to bring that up, that I know Nicole's not here with us tonight, and it was one of the things that I had left to compliment this book, that the artwork is fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, her and Ellie fucking killed it. I'm sure you obviously agree with us on that.
I 100% do, and I didn't draw it, so I could say that shit. Like,
there you go.
I think it really is seeing is believing. Like looking at the book, us talking about it is fun, and it's really nice to be able to talk about this thing after having worked on it for so long, but it really is, it doesn't communicate what it is to read the book, because so much of the world and the execution and the tone and the feeling of the book comes directly from how Nicole warps and bends and depicts the reality of the world, right? And she doesn't have a superhero-esque style, which is why they put her on that Batgirl book, because they wanted a different feeling for those young adult graphic novels. And over the course of making that book and this book, it's just been so cool to see her level up and level up and level up. Like I feel like a proud comics mom. I'm just in the corner just like, my baby did it. Oh, she's working for DC.
And her work there too. I was gonna bring it up to her tonight, but was a huge fan of Shadow of the Batgirl, and then seeing her work here now too. There is a slight difference, and I like it. I feel like I don't want to say complete I don't want to make it sound like Shadow of the Batgirl is bad by any means, but it does feel like it almost an improvement. I feel like for this story, like this theme that they were going for, like her and Ellie really killed it with this book, and that's something me and Gino raved about before we got on this interview. Where the first thing we were just like, okay, what do we love about this book? The art, like the art direction, the designs, everything.
Yes,
amazing.
Yeah, I think one of those things is that we started the book and then Nicole got hired to do Batgirl, and then she came back and finished this book. So I think part of it is that we always joke around and call Batgirl her college grad school for comics. And she really it's an amazing achievement. I think the book looks wonderful, but you can see her learning over the course of the process of making it, which is what I like. I like seeing people figuring out and leveling up. Even Frank Miller, you look at the initial Sin City book, and then you look at A Dame to Kill For or Yellow Bastard, and he's figuring out how the black and white stuff interrelates over the course of that. So that's not to say that Nicole was not skilled prior to doing the book. She was very skilled, but that bitch learned how to draw buildings. What the fuck? Her buildings in that book are amazing. If you haven't read Shadow of the Batgirl by Sarah Kuhn, Chris Peters, and Nicole, you should go read it. It's a very charming, cool origin for Cassie Kane. I like it a lot. Yeah. But specifically, the way Nicole draws libraries and giant stained glass windows and buildings are just oh my God, what is this?
I want to say it was the full panels of Paradox and Rebecca. I'm sorry, I always forget Paradox's real name.
Stanley,
Stanley. The shot of them in the car, the two back to back.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah. No, there's lots of really great stuff like that she added, and it's funny. We even have a term for those pages where at this point, we. Nikita, going to your point of I think Shadow of the Batgirl is amazing. You can see Nicole learning, and I think that's cool. But also that book, it wasn't written for Nicole. It was a book that was written that Nicole was hired to make. And I think there's a difference, right? It's almost kind of like a studio making Jurassic Park 4, and they hire a cool indie director to make Jurassic Park 4. where
Yes.
Tulip is kind of like, I wrote it tailored to Nicole's aesthetic, and there's multiple things that I know she likes to draw that I wrote into the story so that she could draw them. And one of them, or we call them we call them hair in the wind moments, where like, is there a moment where two characters are quietly or poignantly having a kind of sad moment and there's hair blowing in the wind? That's the kind of moments that Nicole just like expands and breathes life into and really lives in that pocket. For our Fuck Off Squad book, there's a sequence where two of the characters are driving out to the beach late at night, and they like get out of the car and they're just kind of like walking along the ocean, and there's no dialogue. They're just kind of like sadly walking along the beach at like 2 a.m. or whatever. And I wrote that in the script of just like, do your Nicole Goux sad wind blowing in the hair stuff. And she did these amazing double page spreads with all these panels and like close-ups on eyes and, you know, clenched fists and you know, the corners of tears and all this kind of stuff. Like she's a very skilled illustrator at knowing her own kind of voice in that way. Like she knows, look, man, if you want a car chase, I can fucking draw a car chase, but it's not going to be very good. Like I don't like drawing cars. I can do it, but it's not the thing. Mm-hmm. What I like drawing are sad girls being, you know, alone, hair blown in the wind. And there's literally a scene in our book where Becca is at Stanley's mansion up in the Hollywood Hills, and she's like looking out over the city of Los Angeles, and it's kind of like sad, twinkling, you know, golden hour lights, and she's out there by herself, and the hair is blowing in the wind, and it's like maybe my favorite scene in the book because it's so experiential. Like you can tell that Nicole has lived these types of experience, and it's her in air quotes narrative voice is coming to the forefront in that moment. Like her personality is being manifested so deeply in that small little millisecond. Whereas, you know, if I was to write and then a guy jumps out with a machine gun and starts shooting people, she'd be like, I don't fucking want to draw this. Yeah, I don't care about this, Dave. And it's funny because our drafts sometimes go through that, where I'll start developing an idea and she'll literally just be like, that's a good idea, but I don't really want to do that. And that's how I know, like, wow. Oh, okay, that's it. I'll save that thing for something else.
Yeah. That's so cool. Your guys' work chemistry is just so, I feel like you guys kind of have the perfect like work relationship when it comes like writing a story. Like you both understand each other and like the directions you want to go with, what you both are comfortable with, what you both excel at. That's just so cool. I haven't really met a pair of like comic book writers that have that kind of connection, I feel like.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, you know, there's a trial and error. We've been working together for a while. So, you know, that's not something you just like walk into. Yeah. It's something that you develop over time. And it's something that, you know, Nicole and I are both very serious, as stupid as it is to say. We're both serious about comics. Yeah. We're both very like, we talk about the form, we talk about the medium, we talk about the history of comics a lot, probably more than she wants to. Sometimes she's just like, can we just like, you know, that's not even true. That's a total joke. That's not even true. She honestly, she'll bring up stuff to me about like, hey, what if we did? So, you know, that offhanded joke is not even remotely true.
Still funny, but
yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, like your afterword, which is really well written, by the way. We're just throwing compliments at Dave.
Thanks, man.
Like I hate to say this, we really were blown away by this book. Though Nikita called me earlier and he was like, so like, what'd you think? And I was like, dude, this fucking rocked. But like even from your afterward, you can just like tell like the synergy is there. And I think when it comes to art, like creating co-art, I suppose where you're working multiple different levels into one item, it's so important to have that. And the fact that you guys do just like shines through in this book, it's really excellent. But yeah, we got reviewed on a podcast a couple of weeks ago called Deconstructing Comics, and in the review they said that it felt like a book that was made by one person,
which I was just like, I was so honored by. Look, disclaimer. I've been making comics since I was fucking 18. Nobody has ever given a shit about anything I've ever made, ever. Okay, so I don't want this to seem like I'm like, everyone loves me. I've got a huge ego. Comics fucking sucks. Our culture devalues the art form, and nobody gives two flying shits about me as a person. I know this. I am well secure in that fact. But the fact that, you know, the Deconstructing Comics guys, who are both very, you know, smart, intelligent readers and creators in their own right, were like, it feels like one person made it. I was just like literally doing the 80s like fist pump. Like I was so excited that the thing that's been in my head, because in all reality, I don't really have objective viewpoint on it anymore. Like, I like the book. It's what I want it to be. Nicole did a great job. I can objectively see that. Will people get the book? I don't know. And honestly, there's kind of no, like, it's only from my perspective, there's only upwards from here. Like, Dark Horse is putting it out. We own the book, and if it sells 1 million copies, fuck yeah. If it sells 15 copies, I'm sorry, Mr. Dark Horse. Let me pay you back for some of that printing bill. But like, the success for me is that I've been working literally my entire life to try and put out comics that I feel like represent me and represent the world that I live in. And I feel like this book is a tangible step towards that goal. And I'm very, 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 very proud of the work that we did, and specifically very proud of Nicole and Ellie Hall, because they both made the work 150 times better than it would have been if I tried to draw it. I couldn't have made this book. I just couldn't.
Well, I agree that it's an amazing book, and I want to ask a few other questions about it. But before we do, I just hope you know, Dave, it was a huge deal when you message us and reach out to us on Your Resident Nerd. I think you're selling yourself a little too short. You've worked on a lot of really cool projects. Action Hospital sounds amazing, and I've had friends who have read it and absolutely love it. Star Trek. A lot of my friends are huge Star Trek nerds, and I've even read a few issues of your book on Seven's Reckoning. But it was the fact that you got to work on like a big franchise like that, a book with a big franchise, is huge. So I hope you know you are incredibly talented. I think Gina will agree with me. Your writing in this book shows it alone. Yeah. So,
well, I appreciate the kind words. I just wanted to make sure that it doesn't seem like I'm a crazy egomaniac being like, this book is so good.
You're right.
These other guys said it was great too.
You're right. You have to seem humble on the podcast at least. We
right. Yeah. As soon as I get off, then I can go back to being an egomaniac. Yeah.
Just you guys wait. Once we end the record button, he's all about himself. I mean,
we'll just keep it on the DL that you paid us $50 to really shove this comic forward. You know, nobody has to know it's great.
Yeah.
But to continue, I do want to ask a few questions about Everyone is Tulip. The only thing is, so minor spoiler warning for some of the questions we might ask. If you are a listener and you want to read this book, check it out. Skip to the end of the video. We'll put links there. We'll also put links in the description on where to find them. But Dave, do you want to quickly tell them on where they can find the book right now if they want to read it before we go into some spoiler talk?
Yeah. If you want to read the book, it's being serialized online at everyoneistulip.com. Go 3 pages a week are going up there. And then it comes out in comic book stores everywhere June 29th, and in bookstores everywhere June 14th. But that also, I think, is maybe in a little bit of flux because COVID shipping stuff. So I hope that's when they come out. I kind of have gotten mixed signals a couple times, so I don't fully know. But the last I have heard is comic book stores June 29, and bookstores like Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, whatever. Yeah. Are there bookstores anymore? I don't know. I haven't been out of my house in a year and a half.
It's a desolate land out there.
Yeah,
you know, they'll come back eventually. There's got to be a time, I hope, one day the rise of the bookstores comes again.
Star Wars Episode 7, Rise of the Bookstores. Yeah,
there we go.
Wouldn't it have been amazing if just Star Wars Episode 7 had just been like one of the Thrawn novels? They were just like, we're throwing this all away and we're just going to do one of the novels that everyone likes.
I wouldn't mind. I'm just
Disney's
saying.
Disney's like, yeah, we're getting rid of the EU, but that's only because you know, we're just gonna copy and paste it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Just don't pay attention to it.
I mean,
It's
they
all the same
kind of did
characters.
that too, right?
They
Like, it's
did,
like
they did.
we're getting rid of the EU, but we're gonna keep Ben Solo, but not Jason and Jaina.
Yeah.
And Ben Solo's kind of gonna be Anakin Skywalker, sort of, but not really. Don't even worry about it. Don't worry about it.
We'll take some of your favorite characters and then we'll just bend them a little bit to where they're not your favorite characters anymore.
Yeah. You know that whole Mara Jade thing? Yeah, we're not gonna do that.
Nah.
We're not gonna do that.
Rip my girl.
Rip Luke too. I mean, he died single and lonely. I mean, our poor boy.
Wouldn't that have been amazing though? Wouldn't that have been amazing if at the end of that movie, when he like dies and he's like, I haven't gotten fucked in like so long. And then he like pulls out a space phone and he's just like, beep, 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 beep. And then he's like, Mara, still dreaming about that booty. Bink. And then they cut to Mara Jade and she's just like, we gotta go fight this first order shit. And the next movie is just Mara Jade. I would have loved that. I would have loved that.
Disney, just hire us already.
Yeah,
we know what you're missing. Just get us.
And none of us are crazy conservative like weirdos. Come on.
Exactly. You'll be fine. We're pretty, I feel like, cancel culture safe, I think. I hope.
I think we're pretty chill for the most part.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have no reason to get canceled, I think.
You know, we'll come out with one
Cross our
Star Wars
fingers.
movie. We're going to think it's great. And then all the people who've been circulating theories for the past 3 years before it comes out will just tear us apart.
Like, God, this is worse than the sequels and the prequels. I mean...
The real question I have, like the Rise of Skywalker was just so structurally flawed and so apparently like a band-aid of a movie. But the thing that I'm so fascinated by that is like, okay, so does that mean Sheev Palpatine had a kid with a partner, or he like was like a weird, you know, dictator and just had like concubines and was just like pumping kids into people? So is there one person that he's related to that fathered or mothered Rey, or is it like there's like a ton of like weird extended Rey family out there?
I would
like,
love to know.
Like, what are all those like clones? Like he's like, you know, he's like, I have lived many lives.
Oh my! I just made the connection. The little orphan on the rich planet in The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
it's Rey's half brother. Bam! He pulls
there. It was meant to be a connection all along.
Oh my
they
God.
just forgot about it. That's
old dirty Sheev Jr. I believe.
Sheev Jr. Oh my God. I love this storyboarding. All right, so now that we got,
I'm gonna go find you, Grandpappy Palpatine.
I have to kill my step cousin Rey or my stepsister, whoever the fuck it is at this point. I guess.
Also, saying that it's the end of a saga is just like, you killed all the original characters. Like this just sucks. Like this isn't the end of the saga. This is just the 9th movie.
Yeah, it didn't feel like. I know this is the premise of this episode, but I do want to get this out there. It didn't feel like we were supposed to care about the trio at all, this trilogy. It felt like they were like, no, focus on the older characters, actually, and then we'll start talking about the trio. At the very end of your trilogy, that you're just blows my mind. Like, I wish I actually cared about any of them, but I
love when they're like in the last one, they're just like, yo, like they're really great friends, by the way, in case you missed it. They're homies.
Yeah,
they always have been homies. They got this great relationship. I'm like, oh, do they really?
I wish we saw that.
And it sucks too, because Finn's introduction in Force Awakens is awesome. I love the idea of, especially like, honestly, those new movies are fine. They're significantly better than the prequels. People hate on them, but give it 10 years and then everyone's gonna be like, The Last Jedi was amazing. Whatever. The best moment for me in those sequel movies is where I don't remember the character's actual canonical designation, but when the movie came out, everyone was calling him TR-8R, the stormtrooper with the like giant bayonet laser thing that he has a fight with Finn, where they're like on that planet and he goes, traitor, and then oh my God, that I've watched that one scene like 15 times because there's so much emotion and it so instantly communicates that this is a fucking neo-Nazi death cult and these people are unwell and they're evil incarnate, and you instantly understand that. And also there's something that's very bizarrely glamorous about that and alluring. Like, we all unfortunately want to be a part of something larger than ourselves, And unfortunately, that's why things like the Hitler Youth happened. Like, I'm not saying it's good. It's objectively terrible. They murdered people. They committed genocide. But that's why motherfuckers have stormtrooper tattoos, because they don't, those two things lose contextual, they lose their contextuality, and then they're just like, I want to be cool and wear a uniform. That looks fun.
And they don't realize the symbolism behind the uniform.
Yeah. Totally.
The whole point.
It's like the Punisher symbol's gotten fucked up over the years in regards
to
who represents it. And it's like,
I'm like completely against what the Punisher is even for to begin with, which blows my mind.
Which is now it's even weirder now that, like, I don't know if you guys have seen these, but the most recent permutation of it, which honestly is like 3 years old at this point, is like, so you get the Punisher skull that then gets adopted by, you know, Chris Kyle and the snipers, and then it filters down into police, and then you get Punisher logos with a black flag and the blue stripe put on actual institutionally approved police cars. And then, this is the weirdest part to me, people on the internet taking the Punisher skull and putting Donald Trump's coif on the skull. Like, not only does it look ugly, but it's just like, you realize that these are the people that Frank Castle kills.
Yes.
And also, like, it's not supposed to be okay that Frank Castle kills them. He's a cautionary tale. The system failed him, and he went rogue, and it's not good. Like, yes, it's a cultural I mean, look, I'm sitting in front of a fucking Death Wish 3 poster. Like, I love Republican tier movies. Like, I love those, like, I gotta fucking take the law into my own hands. Like, I love that. I love that genre of movies. There's a cultural catharsis to be derived from one man against the odds. Like, I love that stuff.
Yeah.
But they're cautionary tales about, like, we as a culture need to band together so this doesn't happen. Not, we should all just be this guy.
Yep. Wow. Dave, I love it. I fucking love it. I'm glad. I wanted to talk about the Punisher logo so bad on this podcast and just never found a good time to do it. So I'm glad we talked about it here in this episode.
Hey, man. Look, let's do this.
There we go.
We've got our full podcast life ahead of us, Nikita. We're going to tackle every topic. Any nerd topic is nowhere out of our reach.
Anything under
not
the
at
sun.
all.
Oh, okay. Let's wrap it back to Everyone is Tulip. But I love that. I love that segue. So at this point, if you haven't read the book while we've ranted about it, you're no spoiler warning for you.
Like, some time to do so, you know. But I will say, read it before we get to this section. We're gonna talk about it. There might be minor spoilers, but I promise you, you will probably enjoy it a lot more if you've already got, like, the context in mind and you're going forward. So stop the video, go get the book, read it, come back.
Yeah.
Come chill with us.
A few of the questions, I know, like, me and Gino were talking about them earlier, but, like, one thing I get, because we actually kind of breezed through some of them, which was really cool. But one, the inspiration work for the dresses, was that all like Nicole and Ellie coming up with those dresses? What was there anything that inspired them specifically? Because they're amazing.
Yeah, so in the book, there's a mechanic where there are 9 panel grids of, like, basically like montages of the videos that Becca makes. And those dresses that she's in are these elaborate couture, over-the-top, extreme fashion statements that the character Chloe makes for the videos. And they're inspired by a couple real people. Like, there's a Russian performance artist named Dalvita. There's an English woman named Belle Delphine. She's a little bit different in that she doesn't necessarily do performance art in that way, but she has this weird kind of public persona where she is an e-girl, but then she's almost kind of like metatextually making fun and trolling men for supporting the e-girl thing. So she'll like she sold her bath water for like $25 a little like jar like this, and she did a bunch of stuff where she would like sexualize inanimate objects like cucumbers or lettuce or grilled cheese sandwiches or any of these kind of like, just, they're not sexualizable things, but she would do it as this kind of like statement on like the kind of the proliferation of and desire for women on the internet to have this kind of proclivity towards sexual exhibitionism. and now it's funny. She is a very interesting person to me because obviously she started out as like just an e-girl influencer that then moved into this performance art space where she was kind of almost postmodern, like making fun of the tropes of the genre of e-girls. Yep. And now she's transitioned into having an OnlyFans where she makes actual hardcore pornography and makes millions of dollars off of it. Like it's, I mean, kudos, good for her. Like that's awesome. Great for her. But it's so kind of almost like getting dragged down the and not that sex work isn't work, it is, and it's a totally reputable thing. I don't look down on it at all, but culturally our global culture still has a lot to reckon with. And body positivity and sex positivity is something that is probably not going to happen in a substantial way for a very long time, unfortunately. And it's very interesting to me how she has been pulled into these other areas by very large paydays. It's not even just like, hey, here's some money. It's like literally she makes like $1.2 million a month. Yeah. Like that's crazy money. And I mean, so, you know,
she basically like was the rise of the e-girl. I would almost say like really what kind of like, I don't know if I would say started the culture, but would definitely be like one of the most well-known.
She's definitely, she's the Michael Jordan of e-girls. Definitely. Yeah. But I mean, also like, you know, cam girls have been around for 20 years and like, there's, you know, there's, yes, I agree. And no, I don't, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people who've kind of been in that sphere. And there's also interestingly, a lot of like hardcore pornography people who transitioned into that after their careers were kind of over and it didn't quite work, but also they still have massive followings, but they didn't influence culture in the same way. Like, for better or for worse, I feel like Belle Delphine's kind of one of those influencers, almost like Logan Paul or Jake Paul, where like everything they do or Charlie, or, you know, they like everything these people do, like becomes news, even when it's just like, she was spotted at Shake Shack. It's just like, what? Who cares about this? And yet I still click on all of those fucking articles. You know,
what did
like,
she get at Shake Shack? I mean, God.
Charlie went to Red Lobster. What did she get at Red Lobster? You know what I mean? Like it's and so you know, all of those types of people, and then also Poppy too. Like, you know, there's a bunch of these types of internet performance, you know, influencers who have a very codified visual aesthetic, and we had kind of become interested in a lot of them, and they all were kind of in the soup, as it were, of what influenced the visuals of the book. But I cannot take credit for any, like, I mean, it is Nicole made that book. Like I think the actual, like my script, if I had to send my script to somebody the other day who was kind of writing an article about the book and they wanted to see what I like wrote, and the script for page 1. So page 1 of the book is a 9-panel grid of all of these, you know, tulips, and she's saying everyone is tulip over and over again. And there's the elaborate drawings in these dresses. And the first page of my script is Becca's standing on white endless, various tulip outfits, period. Panel 1, everyone is tulip. Panel 2, everyone is tulip. Panel 3. Like I literally didn't describe them at all. It was just like, there's some dresses, make it cool. And Nicole just, you know, she made it what it is.
Dang. Yeah, I mean, it's like fashion design, like level work.
Dude, they're amazing. Like, I'm just like, fucking somebody make this into a movie. Let's do this. This would be like, look at these costumes. It's all done. It's done for you.
I actually had a question about that. I mean, like, could you see this work being promoted or transferred into like the movie format one day? Like what would your thoughts be on that? How would you feel about that?
I would be very excited about it. You know, that was not the goal. Obviously, the goal was to make a book. But I mean, look, I'm definitely open to that. If somebody, you know, wants to talk about the potential of that. I mean, to me, I think it would be really cool if it was like a A24 style $5 million movie. You know, it's, you know, Anya Taylor-Joy and Charlie Heaton as Stanley and Becca, like, you know, very intimate character drama, not, you know, I honestly don't even know how you would make this into like a $500 million movie. Like you know what I mean? Like not a lot happen. It's just people standing in rooms like being sad. Like it's not like there's like punching, you know?
Yeah. I mean, but there have been some great movies just about that, like more psychological.
Oh no, 100%, 100%. I just meant like it's not if it was to become a movie,
yeah,
it's not something where it's like gonna have this massive special effects budget. You know? Like the amount of money they spent putting Henry Cavill's mustache off his face in Justice League, you could make this movie for.
Yeah. Fair. Another question I actually had, so this is more pertaining to the book, like in the book. There was something that happened, and I was wondering if it was ever going to come back, and I don't believe it did. But the characters, this is where it might get a little spoilery, but the character Giorgio, who's like the famous producer person that Becca meets, they meet. He's like, "I'll remember your name," yada yada. From there, I don't remember them ever meeting ever again in the book. Was that purposeful? Like you didn't want them to ever meet again? Because I always thought like, oh, is this foreshadowing? Like he's going to see her as Tulip now down the line and maybe make a statement about that of some sort. But was that purposeful for them?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So the scene you're talking about is there's a flashback sequence where Becca's working at a Shiver Me Burgers, and in all of Nicole and I's comics, that restaurant, Shiver Me Burgers, is in all of them. The interconnected comic book universe.
There we go. Built. The whole multiverse.
Yeah. It's in Fuck Off Squad. It's in our new book that's coming out from Simon and Schuster. Yeah, it's in everything.
It's your Big Kahuna Burger, basically. You know.
Totally, it's 100% the Big Kahuna Burger, and so she's working at this burger place, and a movie star who kind of is like a Edward, oh god, what's his name? Edward Cullen, the guy who played Edward Cullen. He's playing fucking Batman. I know
Robert Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true.
Do you actually see it? Because
hell yeah.
Let's go. I love you, Dave. I love you. Because Gino roasted me when I said, yeah, some people say that. And Gino's like, I don't know about that.
That was one of my favorite bits from our last
I can see it. It's in the eyebrows. It's in the eyebrows. In the kind of like the T zone, you know? The Mr. Terrific zone. Yeah. I'm into it.
Perfect. Thank you, Dave. Yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. But yeah, Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, so this kind of Robert Pattinson style actor comes into the restaurant and like has a little interaction with Becca early on when she's in Arizona, and as a kind of like not even a struggling actor, just like somebody who wants to pursue this. And he kind of takes the time to just be nice to her and be like, yeah, you should do it. You got this. And it has a fundamental impact on her to the degree that she moves to Los Angeles, not necessarily because of him, but it's a big moment for her as a person. Yeah. And yeah, I think we didn't have it come back for multiple reasons. One, just because that feels like something that would happen in a story. You know what I mean? Like to me, there's almost kind of a sadness in that, where you want her to have this moment where she meets him again as an equal, and it doesn't happen. And they're he doesn't recognize her because he can only see Tulip or whatever. And that moment isn't in the book very consciously, but that also doesn't mean that moment doesn't happen. Like at the end of the book, she makes a very specific decision, and very specific ramifications from that decision will happen. And to me, I feel like the thing that you just outlined probably happens in that scenario. Does that make sense? I'm trying not to spoil everything.
Yes, of course. Yeah. I get it. Where it's something that could happen down the line, if the story would continue kind of after the ramifications. Yeah.
And to be clear, if we sell billions of fucking copies, we'll make another one. But to me, this is the story. Like I don't I don't picture this as like the first chapter or a prologue. This is a beginning and a middle and an end. And it has a very specific structure to it. And it's about those big choices that you make that set you up for the rest of your life. And depending on what those choices are, your life has a very different meaning and a very different substance to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're obviously the author in this instance, so I'm not going to speak for you and be like, there doesn't
just politely. I am not the author, because comics is a collaborative meeting. medium, and there are no authors. That's something that really drives me nuts, where
Okay, yeah.
I mean, this is not you. I'm not saying this to you. I'm saying like there are people in the industry that are writers that refer to themselves as authors, and an author is a sole creator who makes a work. I am the author of Action Hospital Volume 2, or other mini comics that I've made or something like that I write and draw. But for a writer to say that they're an author of something made with a collaborator, I personally find very disrespectful to their creative compatriots that they're making the work with, because they just didn't make it. Like, they made it in collaboration with people, which is fun and cool. And you could even have like the auteur theory and say that they were responsible for charting the course. Okay, that's a conversation we can have. But there are a lot of people who want that, because there's a lack of comics literacy in our country, which is it's very depressing to me, where people don't know how the books are made. A lot of people don't even know comics are still made, period. Every week I get, oh, you make comics? They still make those? Oh, that's so nice.
Oh my God. Wow.
It's so weird. But Gino, I'm so sorry. That was not me attempting to attack you or
it's a good distinction to make. It is.
It's something we run into similar, like, in analyzing the movie industry. Obviously, as you said, the auteur theory. I mean, like, there's a really big debate in regards to how much do we prescribe to the director. So I totally get it. I apologize.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
No. That's not on you. That's just me. I've been, because it's honestly, it's happened a couple times over the course of us doing all these interviews and stuff. And I never know if I should not call someone out, but like if I should make a point to address that, because then hopefully if I say it enough, maybe some other people will listen and we could just not have this. It's the same thing though, like the Twitter debate that happens every 6 months of like, which is more important, the comic book writer or the illustrator? The illustrator. It's always the illustrator. Comic book writing is bullshit. Like, it's the illustrator is the most important part of that process.
Yeah, I would agree. Not that I know too much about the process, but having understood it. I mean, when you look at the art,
totally.
The art sells it. The art is what.
The art is what it is. And that's not to say that that writing is not important. It is. But if Rob Liefeld was trying to make Everyone is Tulip, I don't know. I love Rob, man. Oh, Uncle Rob. I literally have a Fighting American toy, right? I have a Fighting American toy on the wall right here, right next to me. I love Rob Liefeld. This is not a type of thing that Rob Liefeld could do. Yes, and that shows you how important the artwork is and how integral Nicole and Ellie, Ellie Hall, Nicole Goux were to making this book. There's no one on this project named Kelly. I don't know where that name came from.
Combination of the two. You just took the "K" from Nicole and then
yes,
there you go.
100% what it is. Thank you, Nikita.
You're welcome. I've got your excuses ready. I'm here.
Thank you.
No, literally, like coming in with like a new sequel, like I almost feel like it'd be impossible to not have any one of like not having any one of you three, like it just wouldn't be a sequel anyways, right?
I don't think
as we said earlier, this project is like your guys' synergy is like really coming to light. So
yeah, I agree. Did I even answer your question? You were like in the middle of
saying something and I was like,
Gino's authors are bullshit. I'm so sorry, Gino. I'm so sorry.
No, it's totally okay. It was something about the sequel idea. If you had any ideas as to where you would go in the future.
If we did a sequel.
Yeah. If you were, thinking about it. Because like, honestly, I mean, I agree with you. It feels like such a well, like self-contained story that has a lot to dig into in regards to like our present society. That I hate saying that so much. It feels so typical to be like, no, but it says a lot about our society, but it really does. Like, I think it has a lot to dig into. And it's, as I said earlier, like in regards to pinning this down to a genre, I love the idea of like calling it a slice of life, because I think it works well in regards to just like looking at like normal life in a different lens or sphere, one that helps somebody who might not be involved with it to understand it better. So
and also, like, I mean, it's basically like a drama, right? Like there are a lot of TV shows every year that are just dramas.
Yeah
There aren't a lot of comics that are just dramas. And that's kind of how I think about it, right? Is it's I mean, I've never actually seen The Good Wife, but I'd assume that's what it's like, right? The Good Wife is like people in rooms having conversations and being like, how dare you do that thing? Like, I literally don't even, is the show about a mobster's wife? I literally don't even know what that show's about. I don't know why I picked that show, but there's like shows like that are, very kind of like, prestige dramas like West Wing or something. I mean, that has like the political bent to it, which ours doesn't, but like, it's a dialogue-based, character-based thing where you're going to spend time with these people. They're going to go through problems and they're going to have to make choices. And there's going to be no spandex. Ironically, though, our book probably does have spandex in it, just not the type that comic book readers are probably associated with.
Man, I think we have time for one more question. And I'm not, Gino, do you have a nail biter of a question? I have one in my head.
I'm enjoying this conversation.
I love the conversation. It's just for viewers. You probably know this already if you saw the last episode. I'm in my friend's apartment and it's 11 o'clock now, so I don't want to run it too fast because I do have work in the morning. But I have been loving this conversation. My last question, Gino, if you have any more that you want to ask, feel free. But my last one is, why tulip specifically? Was there a reason? Or was it just kind of, it fits what you guys want to do?
I mean, I think, like I had said, not to dodge the question, but like if you're familiar with this world and you know the people, it's because of one of the primary influences, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a person in the real world who has a name that's kind of like this. And like that kind of was a jumping off point.
Okay.
Like I said, I think our book is nothing like that. Like that's, you know, our book is nothing like the real person.
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing, but there are, you know, it's like loosely inspired by some of these people. So there's definitely, that's there to a certain degree. Okay. If that makes, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gino, anything else from you?
I think you covered the last one that I was going to broach upon.
There we go. Well, wow, Dave, dude, thank you again for coming on this podcast. You've been amazing. The talks we had before this show was hilarious. And the fact that we got to talk not only about your book, but some Star Wars and Punisher logo stuff was actually really fucking cool.
Man, we TR8R, where you at, bro? Where you at, TR8R?
That's right.
You gonna show up in the Mandalorian or some shit? I don't know. Come on, man. Where you at, TR8R?
I want your origin story. Someone make a single issue comic.
I think there was.
I believe so.
There wasn't.
I know there was one for Phasma, but I wasn't sure.
I think there's a novel where it's about Finn, TR8R, and another stormtrooper in Stormtrooper school that like leads up to Force Awakens. But honestly, like, not to be dismissive, but we all know how Star Trek and Star Wars novels are. Like, they're in continuity and they're counted until they're not.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
And he was such a meme. Like, I was like, oh, I hope they bring TR8R back for the next one. And then just
we got Phasma, though. Let's go.
Yeah, we got Phasma. I love her. I love her idea. I love the idea of her character. It's so cool. But they did the same thing they did to Boba Fett, where it's just like, we're not going to give this character anything to do. We're not going to give this character any actual character. At least she got lines, sort of.
I just can't believe they brought her back. Because the way they treated her in episode 7, I thought was really. I mean, it was funny. They throw her into the trash compactor. Okay, like whatever. Like, you know, it subverts the narrative. But to bring her back in episode 8 and then like again just kind of throw her away, I was like, bro, like, what are we doing here? Like, what's going on, people? Come on.
Yeah. Listen, Disney, bottom line, just hire us. We got you. We'll cover your bases, please. We know what the fans want. We're the fans.
On, Gwendolyn Christie. Give Gwendolyn Christie her own Phasma series.
Yes.
She rules.
She would kill.
She rules.
And
that's the thing that's so frustrating is that she's a great casting. The costume rules, and this idea that she's like this kind of like Imperial sanctioned Boba Fett is a really cool idea. But guess what? They're not going to do anything with it. All right, cool. All right.
She could have been the next Boba Fett, I feel like, for this trilogy. And then,
her whole character is just like that one line that Maz Kanata has where she's like, but that's a story for another time. Yes. That's her character is she walks in and they're like, oh, yeah, this is cool, but that's another time. Oh, your costume is so great. That's a story another time. Like, come on. She rules. Give her some fucking stuff to do.
Oh, directors. Oh, Disney. Oh, Disney. I don't want to put it all on them, but like, it's Disney indeed, Gino, right?
Yeah, don't get me started. We could have a full conversation on that.
Well, that's a time for another episode, but I would like to say
another
time. But Dave, do you want to remind everyone one more time, where can they find Everyone is Tulip?
You can find Everyone is Tulip serialized online at everyoneistulip.com. You can pre-order the book there. links to Barnes and Noble, comic book store locator. Also, you know, I'm no better than anyone else. Sometimes you gotta give Big Daddy Bays some money, you know, give a little them Zoes dollars, you know. Amazon. I'm talking about Amazon.
That's right.
You know, like, so, look, if you gotta go to Amazon, you gotta go to Amazon. I'm not gonna judge you. It's on there, pre-order, you can get a discount, right? I would prefer you get it from an independent bookstore. If you're in Los Angeles, lots of cool shops to go to. Mega City One, Golden Apple, Secret Headquarters. Vault of Midnight is in Michigan. They're really nice to us. They bought a bunch of books. I was surprised at the amount of books they bought when I emailed them. I was very, very excited, very, very excited. Yeah, if you want to find me on the internet, listen to me talk about dumb shit on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. It's at xDaveBakerX, which is how we became friends.
That's right.
And if you want to buy my comics that are not distributed through Diamond, you can do so on my website, heydavebaker.com. Or if you want to listen to my podcast, which is a deep dive explainer podcast called Deep Cuts, you can find that wherever you get your podcasts. The brief pitch for that is that each week, my co-host Andrew Price and I pick a topic and walk the listener through the ins, the outs, and the nitty-gritty so they can appear like an interesting and idiosyncratic person at their next forced social function. We've done episodes about the file-sharing service Napster and how it destroyed the music industry, and we did it all as a 2-hour musical with 11 original songs that Andrew and I sang.
Oh my God.
We did it. We did an episode about Buckaroo Banzai, the acclaimed cult movie from the 1980s. And at the end of the episode, we got the original writer and the original director to produce a radio play style narrative sequence starring 2 of the original actors from the movie, Pepe Serna and Billy Vera. And they reprised their roles as their characters for the Buckaroo Banzai short reunion. And yeah, if you're into weird, obscure, cool, random bullshit, come listen to Deep Cuts.
Yeah, check out Deep Cuts. I'm definitely going to check it out after this. That's fucking sick. Oh my God. Well, to follow up with that, I guess follow your resident nerds on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all those places. That's where you'll find this interview, obviously, if you're listening. But Dave, thank you so much again. You've been such a cool guy to talk to. As you know, that is Dave, comic book writer, artist, author, professional. Living the dream, obviously. I'm Nikita, your local comic nerd.
I'm Gino, your select weeb authority.
And this was your resident
Nerds.
nerds.
Thanks for watching.